Hey, what's going on, folks? Joshua here, 86 Boxing. Happy to be in the building. Happy to come and show some love. Once again, we're talking about boxing history. We're talking about none other than the great toy bulldog, Mickey Walker. So we'll have about an hour, somewhere around there, where we'll dive into, I guess, some of the tidbits of his career, what he was able to accomplish, or more so, even just the fights in general, as he is one of the all timers, the all time greats there, and a major weight mover. So, first and foremost, if you are new to the channel, feel free to subscribe. What else going on? Feel free to subscribe. Be sure to like the video. Matter of fact, anyone in the mix here tonight or watching on replay, be sure to like the video. And if you aren't currently a subscriber, do subscribe. Do a solid there for me. Subscribe. I appreciate it wholeheartedly. But as mentioned, yeah, we're here to talk the toy bulldog, Mickey Walker. If I think about a list of some of my favorite fighters to see on film from some of the older eras, then no, most certainly Mickey Walker is one of those individuals. He, excuse me, he defied some of the things that we see in current boxing today, or at least he defied logic in the sense that, as mentioned, this guy moved up in weight. He wasn't afraid to exchange with welterweight just as much as he wasn't afraid to exchange with heavyweight. And that's the beauty of a fighter like Mickey Walker. As a matter of fact, he competed at all of those weights from welterweight on up. I believe he got as low as 137 is what I saw. And just think about that, put it in perspective there. A guy, let's just say he's 140. Just think about someone from junior welterweight or super lightweight, eventually moving up and competing with heavyweights. Now, we have seen some massive and major weight movers here in the sport, but it's rare to see one coming from that low make it up to the heavyweight ranks and actually be formidable, to actually do a pretty solid job from an overall standpoint in the midst of such. So I think that's what kind of sets him apart, that sort of doggish nature of him, that tenacity, that aggressiveness. That's all what makes up Mickey Walker. If you polled a bunch of the older fans who are familiar with the era, the 30s, etc., then I'm sure that Mickey Walker would come into the fold as one of the favorite fighters for some of these individuals. I think that naturally would just be the case, just given the fact that he was an exciting fighter with an exciting style, and he was a fearless fighter. You know, here, modern times, thinking about modern times and where we are today, a big fight that is coming up is, of course, Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Crawford, and this is going to be at 168 pounds. Now, it makes things interesting when you compare such to the likes of a Mickey Walker, who was welterweight and middleweight champion of the world, and even fought at heavyweight, fought heavyweight champions, guys who held the championship at one point. And just think about that. What if Crawford decided from here that he was going to go up to light heavyweight, then cruiserweight, and dare I say heavyweight? That's something to think about right there. That is something to think about. And of course, Mickey Walker, he's a guy that did it. So it shows you what he's made of right there. But again, we're going to look into him. So while you're here, hey, I appreciate you being here. Of course, we're going to dive right into the mix. And if you have any questions, feel free to jump in at any point. So I'm going to pull up his notable fights really quick. I'll do that while I make sure this is connected on the other streaming locations. But check it out. Look at that name. Look at the resume or the names on that resume there. That is something that is a sight in itself to see for sure, because it's really a who's who of boxing. Who's who. You will be hard pressed to find a resume or a list of names on a resume that could match or mirror the names that you see there. Now, there are some that do top that, believe it or not. But that being said, this is one that is most certainly a standout type of resume, and one that you don't see every day. I mean, think about who you think has the best resume here today in the sport of boxing, and I bet if you go down the list of names for comparison, I mean, it's truly standout in that sense, truly standout. So, Mickey Walker, amazing fighter there, amazing resume for sure, but certainly one you want to know of. Real quick, I want to send a shout out to Define Irony. It says, salute 86, God bless. God bless to you there as well, Define Irony. Appreciate you dropping by. Most certainly, we're talking about toy bulldog Mickey Walker. He was like a bulldog in there. That doggish nature, I guess that's how he got his nickname. That tenacity, like a dog. And you can see that in the way that he fought. So, again, let's think about some of the names that he has on that resume. Of course, rather impressive resume overall. You got Jack Britton, the Marvel. You got Dave Shade, Soldier Bartfield, Johnny Griffith, Lou Bogas, Pete Latzo, Lou Tindler, Mike McTeague, Harry Greb, Tiger Flowers, Ace Huggins, Tommy Lochran, Leo Lomsky, Jack Sharkey, Max Milling, Maxie Rosenblum. There are crazy amount of champions on that list right there. I didn't even include all of the names on his resume. I went with the more notable, but certainly there are even more that are on his resume who are some of the best in the history of the sport. And I think we can start in a sense with probably the biggest name, or not necessarily the biggest name on his resume, but one of the more polarizing names on his resume, of course, is Harry Greb. Now, that's one that is truly a standout. If you think about people interested in boxing history, those that have followed along the journey, those that research and go back, then you think about video and the fights that we don't have on video. This would be a very sought after fight right here. This one being Mickey Walker and Harry Greb lacing them up. As a matter of fact, when you think about the footage that we do have of each fighter, one of the rare footages or rare films, newsreel films that we have on Harry Greb is actually a newsreel from the time when he and Mickey Walker actually signed to fight. So if you've seen that Harry Greb newsreel, then you've likely seen the version where, or the scene, the cut where Mickey Walker and Harry Greb are essentially signing contracts. They're there with the promoter, some others, etc., in a suit. Mickey Walker's there in a suit. I know one of the guys has a cigar. I think the promoter has a cigar. And you get to see him there. It'd be awesome to hear what they were saying. But, of course, the sound aspect of it was certainly different then, or lacking in some sense. But you don't hear what they're saying, but you can see them there, and you can see that they were having some form of discussions or banter, chats, whatever. But Greb versus Walker, probably one of the more sought-out fights that we want and we would love to see here as far as historic footage. Shout out to my man Trey Titan 176 in the building. Says peace and blessings, 86. Hey, peace and blessings to you there as well, Trey Titan. Be sure to go hit them up, folks, as well as Defined Irony. Be sure to hit them up there. Appreciate you always showing love here, Trey Titan. Here talking Mickey Walker. And while you're here, of course, everyone, be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't. Be sure to check out the website. More stuff will be coming there soon, 86boxing.com. We're on the other social media channels down there at 86boxing, pretty much everything. But Mickey Walker, the toy Bulldog, him and Harry Greb, from all indications, was a very exciting back and forth contest where the two men both put in great work over the course of that period. And from indication, it may have been filmed. You know, I did speak with Carl Weingarten last week, maybe a couple weeks now, but I did speak to Carl Weingarten, and he's a fight film collector. He doesn't have the grab footage, but hey, there are potentially some out there. He said there could be some out there that someone is storing or holding, or it might be in an attic, just unseen. You never know. It's becoming rarer and rarer, but it could be out there. Plus, in other countries, a similar thing. In some of it, it's like getting access to this stuff isn't always an easy thing. But that being said, this is one where I believe it might have been filmed, if I recall correctly. Carl mentioned he's friends with Steve Compton. Steve Compton wrote the book on Harry Greb, The Life and Times of Harry Greb, or something of that nature. And I do recall seeing an interview with Compton where he mentioned there were some fights filmed. When you think about a guy with 300 fights, you would think it would be more than just a handful, but I believe it was only a handful of fights that were actually filmed on Harry Greb. And that's maybe 4 to 5. And as of right now, no known surviving footage, or at least not in the possession of someone who has been willing to share. That being said, could be out there. And I say that because of the fact that one of those might very well be Harry Greb versus Mickey Walker, who we're talking about here today. Mickey Walker, great fighter, as mentioned. If you look at him stylistically, man, he's a guy who would come forward, and he wasn't afraid to exchange, wing those shots in there. You can see he's like a compact guy in some sense. He's 5'7". That being said, he looks compact in there at times, and he'll get off those hooks. And you can see that he just packed something in that punch, and he could just get the job done, whether it's via knockout or he could take things to the distance and still have that sort of fervor late in fights and be ready and aggressive. And the size, as I mentioned, didn't matter. He continued to march forward, continued to show that he was willing, doggish and willing in a fight, and a hard guy to put down, a hard guy to break. You really couldn't break his will. It took brute strength in some instances. And you get to see a bit of that on display there for sure. Shout out to Josh Taylor. Salute there to you, Josh Taylor. Appreciate you dropping by there, buddy. Thanks for coming through. Much love there to you. No boxing fan of history there. Josh Taylor, you are appreciated for sure. Shout out to Dan the Man. Says, hey, y'all, I appreciate you there, Dan. Great to have you in the mix. As always, Dan, always great to have the dialogue, connect with you, certainly as it relates to the great history of this sport right here. So appreciate you. And folks, those listening on or whatever, be sure to check these individuals out for sure. Josh Taylor says, a man who fought everyone, no doubt about it. A man who most certainly fought everyone in the toy Bulldog, Mickey Walker, who is our subject of today's video for sure. And so I'll bring up once again just to look so people can see what that resume is like. I mean, look at the names on there. Jack Britton. Jack Britton may very well be the greatest welterweight in boxing history. He's from New York. I believe it's Clinton, New York that he's from, which is a very small town. Very small. It was small then, and it still is small right now. But the boxing marvel, Jack Britton. So that's a name that, if you aren't familiar with Jack Britton, then I would certainly say get yourself familiar with him because, as mentioned, he has a case for the greatest welterweight in boxing history, a hard fighter, someone when you talk about an insane amount of fights, he's one of them, 300 plus fights. I mean, just think about that. 300 plus fights. A single person. A very single person that is one of the best in general. Oh, yeah. And as Josh Taylor mentions, Ted Kid Lewis as well. Yes, Ted Kid Lewis. His main rival being Jack Britton. The two fought about 20 times. As a matter of fact, I got a video script that I've been working on that rivalry specifically. I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but I need to tap back into it and finish that. It's about halfway done, somewhere in that range, 50 to 60%, I guess you can say. And I just need to tap into some of those second half fights. And basically, arguably, and a case can certainly be made definitively that the greatest rivalry the sport has seen is Jack Britton versus Ted Kid Lewis. So it's certainly worth mentioning. Now, Mickey Walker won the world welterweight title by virtue of defeating Jack Britton. And that is a feat in itself because when you think about it, these guys who have that amount of fights or this level of competition in such a quantity, I mean, they know nearly every trick of the trade. The only thing that tends to beat them is wear and tear and father time. That's what tends to defeat a fighter the likes of a Jack Britton and so forth over the course of time. I guess you can say any fighter really. Father time, as they say, is undefeated. And the wear and tear and injuries tend to come into the fold. So that's no different either with Mickey Walker, father time. I mean, only so far one can go, without eventually not being able to continue that sustained damage in competition. So ton of fights, 100 plus fights for Mickey Walker himself, but Jack Britton, we just think about totality of fights as far as those reported. Amazing stuff right there. And as I mentioned, that's where, or he's the individual that Mickey Walker won the welterweight title from. So it's crazy thinking about it, right? The fact that Mickey Walker was world welterweight champion and knowing that, as well as knowing that he fought at heavyweight, which I had alluded to earlier. It's just amazing in thinking about it. Now, other names on there, some guys I know of, and I know of amazing resumes they possess, and I do need to dive a bit more into them. Dave Shade's one of those, another great fighter. He has an amazing resume, fought the best of the best, as is the case with Soldier Bartfield as well. And these are names that, if you're into the history of the sport of boxing, then you've probably heard of these names. That being said, they're not as widely known as they probably should be at this stage. But it's a lot like some of the hidden gems with a number of these fighters who are out there who were some of the best that the sport has ever seen. But over the course of time, kind of the flame faded somewhat as far as their fame, their celebrity. But when you really go back and dive into their resumes and who these individuals were as fighters, then you really see that they were some of the greatest that the sport has seen. And I think it puts things into perspective because of the fact that we can account for what happens here in modern times because we are living it, and we know who some of the standouts are here in modern times. And even with that, we know who are some of the individuals here in modern times who don't quite get as much shine as they probably should, who've had pretty amazing careers. That being said, they don't have the spotlight on them in the same way as others. So just think about that. Some of that gets lost in history in terms of some of these fighters that we have out here who are some of the greats that don't get talked about as much these days. Cheers there, Tez Vaughn. Salute to you. Appreciate you dropping through there, buddy. Be sure to go check him out, for folks. Tez Vaughn, thank you for dropping by. We're talking Mickey Walker. We're talking boxing history in general, but toy Bulldog Mickey Walker most certainly is the subject. Edis, what's going on? Edis Fernandez, what's going on? Salute there to you. Appreciate you dropping by, buddy. Edis Fernandez, hey, always great to have you in the mix. Check him out as well, folks. Steward of history there. It's great to have the discussion with you and the dialogue, and for sure. We're talking Mickey Walker again, folks. Be sure to hit that like button. If you don't subscribe, feel free to subscribe. More to come for sure. We've got other videos dropping as well, focusing on the history of the sport. So be on the lookout. Be on the lookout. More and more certainly coming. We want to keep it fresh. But that being said, yeah, we're talking Mickey Walker and his amazing resume, his amazing career just in general. And there's something to marvel at for sure. Edith says, how do you think did better against Father Time? Or who do you think did better against Father Time? Pac-Man, Foreman, Archie, Hopkins. Good question there. Edith. I think that each of them, they did their own thing for sure. I mean, the standout that a lot of people mention is George Foreman. I think that's because he was heavyweight in the 90s, and you had a ton of more eyes that were on the sport in terms of being able to at least see it as far as visually as we moved up through the 70s, 80s, etc. Network television, all that stuff. I think they were still more involved at that time. You had the premium cable channels, some of which were not covering the sport today. So usually when you think about the great older fighters, George Foreman rises to the top as far as what he was able to accomplish in winning the world heavyweight title by knocking out what is his name? Michael Moore. So yeah, and that's a standout for sure. And I think that's what a lot of people mentioned. And it just so happened to coincide with the fact that he came back, had been this menace in younger age, and then he would go on to have success of the George Foreman grill and all of that stuff. So you can't help but not think of his name and sort of visualize him when you think about the guys who fought at an older age, well past where Father Time usually pushes some of the others out of the sport. Now, as far as the greatest of the older fighters, I do feel that is Archie Moore, the old mongoose right there. That's a true road warrior, true traveling fighter that is in the sport. I see what you're saying there, Edith. Yeah, Edith says I pick Archie. Yep, I'm with you there. As far as the greatest of the older fighters, no doubt, I think that billing goes to Archie Moore. He had a very tough career. He was a part of Black Murderers Row prior to, of course, winning the, I guess, still even considering such, but prior to winning the light heavyweight title. But one of those guys who had to fight just tough competition throughout his career, and really he had to put in a lot of work, being underpaid, being on the worst end of the situation, and he never let it detract him from doing what he had to do. And he had his eyes set on a particular prize, world championship status, and he never let the politics and BS associated with navigating the sport, break his will. I'm with you there, Edis. I think the old mongoose is the standard as far as those surpassing what Father Time usually would have put a stop to just on that journey. Archie Moore, just one of the great older fighters that the sport has seen, and someone whose name still stands out here today. Just one of the greatest fighters in general. I mean, the competition that he has on his resume, I mean, it's a who's who as well. And he fought the guys that some of the other top guys wouldn't fight because they had to fight each other. They had to put food on the table, and that's what they would do. So he's certainly one of them there, Edison, for my money, numero uno there. Though, as I mentioned, George Foreman usually gets mentioned first because I think George Foreman, of course, he broke that, what do you call it, sort of mainstream barrier. He broke into the mainstream in a way that most boxers don't often have the opportunity to do so, or never reach in their career. And I think that was primarily through him in the aftermath as well, and what he was able to do outside of the ring. George Foreman grill, everyone knows what that is. Everyone's probably had one. I had one at one point. I don't know where it's at. Well, I guess I got rid of it. But that being said, we all know about the George Foreman grill, baby. Dan says, specifically Father Time Hopkins top from consistently winning world championship in his 50s. But yeah, Bernard Hopkins, yeah, he's up there for sure. He is up there, no doubt about there. Bernard, he was competing with some of these top level guys there at an older age, taking out some of those guys. He beat guys like Babu Shumanov. I think that's his name, Babu Shumanov. He beat him at, I believe at the time he might have been a cruiserweight who was doing his thing. You know, John Pascal. At one point, I know Bernard Hopkins even trying to, and it was thrown out there, he wanted to fight David Hay, meaning he would move up to heavyweight for that. But it didn't happen. But Hopkins, another one, great one. One of my favorite fighters there as well, just in general. Stylistically, not for everyone, but man, truly smart fighter there in the ring. Knew the tricks of the trade. And then Manny Pacquiao. What can we say about the great Manny Pacquiao, who's another guy who was able to break that mainstream barrier, becoming one of the most popular athletes in the world, you know? So he is most certainly ranking amongst those top guys who are able to do their thing at an older age. Now, of course, we're going to see that at an even older age. So him and Floyd Mayweather, they both fought to their 40s or right there above, or right there just hitting 40 or whatnot at a high level. But Manny Pacquiao, he's about to come back. Interestingly, he does have to be untapped. Going to get a world welterweight title shot against Mario Barrios. That is coming up in a not too distant future, as a matter of fact, and very interesting. So he's like 46 at this stage. So he's continuing to test Father Time. So we're definitely going to find out what he has left. At the very least, we know that, I mean, he has the experience. For whatever step he's lost, he's still going to have some of that muscle memory. He still seems to be pretty good on his feet. And looking at the training, he still moves fairly well. So, hey, I think he'll probably do pretty decently in this contest with Mario Barrios. Barrios, bigger guy, bigger body, of course, who's been active. And that's despite the fact that Pacquiao had come up in weight, you know. But that being said, youth sometimes prevails. We're going to find out. We'll find out together for sure. Define Irony says, I say Foreman, but great options. Cheers there, Define Irony says Foreman, but great options. Most certainly. Hey, what Foreman was able to do, top tier for sure. I mean, winning the world heavyweight title at, or at least a version of it at 45. I mean, crazy. You know, they say sometimes it's a young man's sport. Or sometimes the body is fairly young, but you can use those wits, and that power doesn't go away. And that's what helped him prevail for sure. So It says, I think the level went down with time. If Foreman would have made a comeback in Archie's era, he wouldn't look so good. Hey, I think that's a good case there. Giddis probably wouldn't have, or at least it'd have been a tougher road for sure. Because in the midst of that comeback for Foreman, he did beat some good names, but there were a lot of names that weren't sort of top level elite guys in that sense. So he did work his way into that title shot. We saw Evander Holyfield was able to beat him and really kind of put it on him for sure. That being said, Michael Moore couldn't replicate such, couldn't do such. And Moore was a big puncher, and he came up from, I believe, light heavyweight is where he may have started out. But that being said, light heavyweight or cruiserweight, but I think it was light heavyweight. That being said, you would think that that youth would have prevailed, but Foreman was able to pull it off. I think that power was that magic eraser for him. But you're right. Hey, in the era of Archie, yeah, you'd have to cross paths with some pretty formidable heavyweights there. And it could be tough sledding. Just think about it. Think about crossing paths with the Rocky Marciano or Ezzard Charles. Now Foreman, he would be bigger than these guys, and he would still pack that punch. I'm sure it'd be tough. Jersey Joe Walcott, heck, you name it. You just throw some guys out there, crossing paths with them. Say you cross paths with Joe Louis or whatnot. It'd just be tough for sure. So good point. Shout out to my man Ranger Dangers. Yo, we live. Hey, appreciate you there, Ranger Danger. Folks, be sure to go check out Ranger Danger. My cousin there, he's got a YouTube channel. I think you'll enjoy it. Go check it out. The Real Ranger Danger. Be sure to go give him a like and subscribe. It'll be good stuff. He goes out hunting, fishing, you name it, the outdoors. I think you'll enjoy it. Very entertaining. So shout out to Ranger Danger. Check him out, folks. Dan mentions Mickey Walker, amazing fighter from welterweight champion right up to a pretty good heavyweight. No doubt about it there. Then that's one of the standout things for him. Salute to Rodolfo Rivera Jr. Hey, appreciate you there, Rodolfo. Thanks for dropping by there, buddy. Hey, good to have you here in the mix. Gonna have to definitely check you out, hit you up. So good stuff there, buddy. Random Acoustic Thoughts says, big ups to you there, Random Acoustic Thoughts. Hey, appreciate you dropping by there, my friend. Hey, folks, be sure to go check out Random Acoustic Thoughts channel. A lot of great history content over there on his end. And he's showing some great love to some of the great fighters of some of the most competitive and toughest eras in the history of the sport. Think about the Sam Langfords of the world, the Sam McVeighs, the Jimmy Britts, the Joe Jeanetts, the Joe Gans, you name it, just all of the top level fighters from some of those early eras. Random Acoustic Thoughts is chronicling history over there on his end. Working on a book as well, something great. So be sure to check them out, folks, if you haven't. Rodolfo says what's up as well. Sensei show enough. Boom. Appreciate you there. Hey, I appreciate you dropping by. Always great dialoguing with you as well. Thanks for coming through, showing some love there. Show enough. Ranger Danger says, I'm with Define Iron. I think Foreman for sure. Hey, appreciate your shout out. Hey, no doubt, no problem there. So Ranger Danger, folks, be sure to go check him out. Master Shonuff has arrived as the Shogun of Harlem. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Holla at my man Bruce Leroy. Says, I don't know about Bulldog Mickey Walker. This is going to be new to me. Okay, got you there. Hey, appreciate it. Hey, that's what we're here to learn. We're all learning together. But one of the great all-time fighters, one of the scrappiest fighters, major weight mover, and he went from welterweight all the way up to heavyweight, fighting stiff competition. So I'll pull this up right here. Mickey Walker stood about 5'7" with a reach of, it should be 67 inches. I got 167 there, but 67 inches. That being said, he fought in the welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, in heavyweight division. He's from Elizabeth, New Jersey, USA. Shout out to Jersey out there. But yes, all those divisions he did compete in. And I'll pull up his resume once again, just at least an overview of his resume. Look at the names on there. Maxie Rosenblum, world light heavyweight champion. He fought him. Matter of fact, the light heavyweight title was on the line, I'm pretty sure, in that contest. And Maxie Rosenblum, he got the nod there. So he's in the bottom right there. Maxie Rosenblum, another fighter. So I was talking about Harry Greb and how Harry Greb has 300 or more fights. And we don't have any footage of him fighting, unfortunately, outside of that little newsreel footage. When you think about a guy like Maxie Rosenblum, former light heavyweight champion of the world, he has somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 fights himself. And guess what? No footage of him in action, or at least not right now. You think about that. These guys had a crazy amount of fights. The quantity was insane through the roof. But we don't have any footage of them. Man, I would love to see that. Mickey Walker, Maxie Rosenblum, or Harry Greb with any combination of these guys. So it's pretty crazy when you think about it. But Maxie Rosenblum, one of the great light heavyweight champions the sport has seen, and just fighters in general. Show Enough says Tiger Flowers, indeed, the man whom, well, Tiger Flowers, he won the world middleweight title off of Harry Greb. And he just so happened to be defeated by Mickey Walker. And this allowed Mickey Walker to pick up the world middleweight title, if I didn't say that first, but middleweight title. So Mickey Walker became world middleweight champion, dethroning Tiger Flowers, the man to dethrone Harry Greb. So, hell of a fighter. Tiger Flowers, first black middleweight champion. Couple of videos on the channel. Well, there are more than a couple that mention him, but there are a couple that are centered on him. One of them is one of those sort of high-level career videos. It's AI voice. You know the drill. Something else, I'll have to do something else on him, certainly to be recognized there. Harry Greb mentioned there about Show Enough. Dan mentions this is really awesome record from Britain to Smelling. Yes, that's crazy right there. When you think about it. I was talking about Jack Britton, Mickey Walker taking on Jack Britton. Imagine Mickey Walker fighting Jack Britton, and seeing that at the time, would you have even been thinking, you know what? One day Mickey Walker is going to be fighting Max Schmeling, a world heavyweight champion. Probably not, because you probably would have been at that time just thinking about what was in front of him, which was a number of weight divisions. He wasn't a big guy in that sense. But 5'7", as mentioned, as I showed you. Now, 5'7", that just so happens to be the height of the smallest world heavyweight champion in boxing history, the little giant of Hanover, Tommy Burns. I'm sure you all knew that, right? But yes, Tommy Burns, 5'7", smallest heavyweight in boxing history, same size as Mickey Walker. So seeing Mickey Walker in action there, it's pretty marvelous to see. But we did have a smaller heavyweight who became champion. Now, yeah, that was a pretty solid era in which Mickey Walker eventually rose up to the heavyweight rank. So some competitions up there for sure. When you think about that, now he did fight Max Schmeling and Jack Sharkey. I think in 1931 is when the Schmeling contest took place. I believe it was 1927. It could be off, where the Jack Sharkey contest took place. He beat some other heavyweights there, or he had some other heavyweights he was in with that he was able to beat. I know he beat Johnny Risco, underrated heavyweight, who has a pretty solid resume there. Never became world champion, but he fought just about, well, the majority of the top level heavyweights of his era. And Mickey Walker was able to get a win over Risco. I do remember that Risco came in at about 200 pounds to Mickey Walker's less than that. The highest weight I think I recall recorded at least seeing Mickey Walker come in at was around 179. So I don't know if he ever broke that 170 something barrier and got into the 180s specifically, but oftentimes he was in the 160s. And then on some occasions he'd be in the 170s because, you know, of course, like heavyweight being 175, and then from there and up. Unlike today, you didn't have that cruiserweight in between, or some of those other smaller weights in between, even middleweight, like 168 or whatnot. So you just had to go up and do your thing. So he was in the 160s and 170s, and he was fighting guys who were legitimate heavyweights. Smelling, when he fought Smelling, I do remember that. Smelling, he was about 188 in that contest, somewhere around there, about 188. And I think for Walker, he may have been high 160s or low 170s, but I think it was high 160s. Told you, fearless in there, man. Fearless. Show Enough says, was Mickey Walker able to win titles in more than one weight class? Indeed. Yes, he was able to become world welterweight and world middleweight champion. As mentioned, he picked up the welterweight title off of Jack Britton, the boxing marvel, a guy with 300 plus fights in his career, one of the greatest welterweights in history, arguably the greatest. He picked up the middleweight title against Tiger Flowers, another all-time great middleweight there, the Georgia Deacon, one of the best defensive fighters, and just a tough resume as well in the mix of there. Now, from what I do recall reading, I think that there were some who felt that the Tiger Flowers fight could have gone the other way, or the nod could have been given to Tiger Flowers, from what I recall. That being said, Mickey Walker won titles in both of those divisions. He did get a shot at Maxie Rosenblum, who had the world light heavyweight title at the time. But Maxie Rosenblum, I believe he was able to, I think he outpointed him. Maxie Rosenblum, not a guy with a lot of knockouts, but had a crazy amount of fights, as mentioned, and they usually went the distance. So he could box. He could move well in there, and he could box. Tommy Burns, shortest heavyweight champion. Tyson's second, 5'10". Good stuff there, Dan. Sharing that info for sure. Shono said, could you imagine Mickey Walker versus Primo Carnera? Yeah, it would be crazy. He's the type of guy to do it. He's certainly the type of guy who would have went into the mix, gone into the fight, would have taken that challenge. And, I think he would have been stopped, because I think that size would have been just a little too much for him right there in that regard. Shout out to Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz and more. Salute there to you, Bruce. Appreciate you there. Salute brother Bruce there in the mix. Be sure to go check him out, folks. Great history content. I'm going to try to get back over there, Bruce, for the quizzes, all that good stuff. I've been seeing you putting in that work, doing your thing. I even see your post there, Bruce. So, folks, if you're here, you haven't, be sure to go like and subscribe to Bruce Gas's channel, Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz, and more. Very entertaining. Gives you all of the good information on all things 70s, 80s, 90s, especially in and around the heavyweight division. I mean, a steward of the history there. So I learned a good deal from checking out Bruce as well. So appreciate you dropping by there, Bruce. Since could you imagine Walker versus Primo Carnera? As mentioned, yes, I think he would have been stopped. It would have been a tough one for him. He would have been game for sure. Mickey Walker was a referee between Primo Carnera and Jess Willard. Would look like WWE. Yeah, that would be crazy seeing something like that. But Mickey Walker, I think Primo would have stopped him, because if you see the contest, and it just so happens, so I went back, I had seen these. I wanted to take another look. I went back and I took a look at Mickey Walker versus not Primo, but Jack Sharkey, as well as Mickey Walker versus Max Smelling. And the fights, they went a little bit differently. Mickey Walker, he actually did fairly well with Jack Sharkey, given the circumstances. being the smaller guy still in that contest. And Sharkey, he can actually box. You know, Sharkey had some up and down performances over the course of his career. But Mickey, he was able to land some big shots on Sharkey. There were head snapping shots at that, you know, but he didn't have the power to stop a guy like Sharkey or whatever. Mickey Walker, he had some pop, but not that one punch knockout artist type guy. But he could get you out there. It was just tenacity and all that stuff. He could overwhelm you, and you could tell that he was strong. He was physically strong. You just knew that. You could see and look and know that he was a physically strong guy. And I think others would share such. But he was able to give Sharkey a pretty solid run. Now, in the case of Max Schmeling, it was really all Schmeling. I think that Schmeling, you realize where the weight difference and sort of the mentality came into the fold. I don't know what Sharkey's mentality was going into his contest with Walker, but I'm sure he probably felt that he was going to handle him probably fairly easy. I don't know. This is me just thinking. I don't know if he said that for sure, but I'm sure Sharkey was pretty confident going in. But when you see Schmeling in there, there's no doubt he was confident in this contest. And Mickey Walker, he was game coming forward as he always does. But you could see the writing was on the wall early on, because unlike against Sharkey, Schmeling, he didn't really allow for Mickey Walker to use his strength, which would have been his stronger suit in some of the lower weights, to his advantage, because every time he got tied up and tried to push back Max Schmeling, Schmeling wasn't having it. And there were only a handful of moments from Mickey Walker in that contest with Schmeling where he found a little bit of success, but nothing truly threatening to Schmeling. And as mentioned, anytime they were in closer tied up, you could just see that Schmeling was the bigger, stronger guy in there, and he didn't give Mickey Walker that thought or that feeling that he would be able to gain some form of an advantage over Max Schmeling. Max Schmeling didn't allow him to even get that in his head. And you could just see he pretty much ate all of the punches that Mickey Walker was throwing. And you could just tell with the way that Max Schmeling was landing that straight right, came overhand sometimes. You could just tell he was eventually going to chop Mickey Walker down. He dropped Mickey Walker in the first round. The fight went 8 rounds, and Max Schmeling ultimately, man, he had him all but out in the 8th round, dropped him multiple times. Mickey Walker was on groggy legs. Here in modern times, the fight likely would have been stopped. He was pretty much done for, like a zombie in there at that stage. And the round before, you could see that Mickey Walker threw some of his best punches, and they landed. This was round 7. This was prior to the last round. So Mickey Walker was able to land some of his best shots, probably his best shots of the overall fight. And you could tell that Max Schmeling wasn't fazed by him. Max Schmeling, very underrated heavyweight. Don't let the record fool you. I mean, man, he was solid. And he sent Mickey Walker packing. The corner stopped it after the 8th round. I guess Jack Kern stopped it. But basically, that showed, like, hey, you could be a great smaller fighter and go up against some of those guys in higher weights. It depends on who you're going against. You can find a way to get a job done. Like Roy Jones, for instance, he beat John Ruiz at heavyweight. A beautiful thing right there. But he wouldn't have beat every heavyweight from that era or for that period. It's just like sometimes you match up well. And it just so happened Mickey Walker, he matched up fairly well against Jack Sharkey. Then ended up being a draw. But with Max Schmeling, especially given his style, yeah, too much right there. But that's a good fight. If you haven't seen that, the video is out there. Go check out Mickey Walker versus Max Schmeling. Regardless of the outcome, it's just amazing seeing a guy like Walker in there with Max Schmeling, and we know Max Schmeling's a world heavyweight champion. And just think about those two going against each other, right? And the irony is from Max Schmeling and Jack Sharkey, of course, we know they fought. And I have a video on the channel. It's called Low Blow or whatever. It's the only time in which a title exchange hands via low blow, when Sharkey low blowed Max Schmeling. He couldn't go on. And title exchange hand via low blow. So check that out if you haven't, folks. It's on the channel for sure. Since Show Nuff says I got to get going, check back as soon as I can. Appreciate you there, Show Nuff. Thanks for dropping by there, buddy. Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz. Dan says Bruce has the endurance. By the way, wanted to check. Yes, Manny Pacman win another title. Oh, yes. Hey, I think so as well there, Dan. I got him winning. It's going to be an interesting one. I think it's kind of 50-50 because of the fact that you don't know how one is going to look from being out for so long and then jumping back in and taking on a world champion, regardless of the overall level. Barrios is a world champion, but I do have Manny Pacquiao getting the job done. I said on another podcast, I said Manny Pacquiao has forgotten more than Mario Barrios has learned. And I think that's what will allow him to prevail. Alexander Kemmer, salute there, Alex. Shout out to you. Appreciate you dropping by there, buddy. Alex Kemmer, Viva Ukraine. He says, great. Graham beat Walker pretty early. Okay, cool. One of the greatest lost boxing films. Indeed. Canero's mob on tomato can. I put my money on Walker. Smelling beating the stuffings out of Walker. Oh, yes. Yeah. I got you. Yeah, indeed there. Yeah, Primo, there was definitely some control factor there. You know, the funny thing is I was actually looking at, I didn't watch the movie, but I was looking at the trailer for, or a short clip, as a matter of fact, for The Harder They Fall. And that's a movie where the main character, main boxer, I don't know, he may be the protagonist of the whole thing, but he is based off of Primo, or loosely based off of Primo Carnera, and the situation between Primo Carnera and Max Baer when they fought or whatever. So it's pretty funny, but yeah, he did have people in control of him. Italian mob, crazy. I'm sure that I know there's stuff out there. I haven't dove fully into all of the particulars surrounding such. At one point, Mussolini was using him sort of as a pillar for, you know, success in sort of that fascist state. That being said, yeah, he managed to win the World Heavyweight Championship. As a matter of fact, you know, he managed to get it, but he could be beat. Huge guy. Hey, Walker would give it to him. Alex, I think he would keep coming forward to give it to him. It'll be interesting. I will say that. I think that size may factor in, but you never know, because Mickey Walker was ever as game as any would want to see in the sport there. At 5'7", as mentioned, he was doing his thing, pulling up the resume again. So you have other names on there. Pete Latzo, a former world champion right there. He might have been a welterweight champion, welterweight or middleweight. Lou Tindler, lefty Lou Tindler, big-time puncher. As a matter of fact, there's a little bit of video out there where lefty Lou is taking on Benny Leonard. I think it's more than a little bit. They may have the whole fight. I know I've seen it, and I've seen maybe multiple variations of it. But Lou Tindler is another fighter who's a big-time puncher. I mean, his name isn't as known these days, but a hell of a fighter. Would be lightweight champion were it not for the great Benny Leonard, the ghetto wizard there. But there's video out there on Lou Tindler. I don't have anything specifically on the channel of him outside of maybe some shorts and some photo animation videos, but a name to definitely check out. And as mentioned, there is footage of him taking on Benny Leonard. And we know that Benny Leonard, for most people's money, the greatest lightweight in history. I have Joe Gans, but they're interchangeable in some sense. Benny Leonard is right there. And you can certainly make a case for Benny Leonard. Great all-time fighter there. Had an amazing career, retired, came back, still did his thing somewhat. But that being said, one of the great fighters in general. Mike Mateague, tough and rugged fighter. I'm trying to remember if Mike Mateague won a world title. I want to say he didn't, but he's been in there with plenty of them. And he's one of the best from the era as well, in and around that middleweight range, welterweight, middleweight range. You know, as mentioned, you didn't have all of these other classes that were stacked in between like we do see today. But a guy like Mike Mateague, I mean, he'd be a force here today because he's just someone you got to deal with, a tough competitor that you would just have to deal with on a routine basis there. Alex Campbell says, great movie. The movie was almost a carbon copy of Canero's life, with Max Baer, the actor, playing the part of the fighter that beats El Toro to a pulp. Okay. Good to go. Yeah. So I did see a clip of kind of that fight as well. In some of the clips I was watching, they showed that fight in which he gave him the business. Pummeling, essentially. Pretty crazy. That's good to know there, Alex. I know it's known as Humphrey Bogart's, I guess, his last film. And so it's a good one. I'm going to have to check out the full thing. I didn't check it out, but I'm going to check out that full thing because I'm a fan of Max Baer, as well as mentioned on this channel previously. The Livermore Larper, Madcap Maxey, former world heavyweight champion, one of the great personalities in the sport, one of the great hangs in the sport, I would say. I was saying that on previous podcasts, but Max Baer, one of the most colorful personalities the sport has seen. He died at a fairly young age, 50. It's crazy, right? But, man, hell of a character right there. And if you saw the Cinderella Man movie, did you know that there's a little bit of some aspects were kind of misunderstood, but Max was a jovial guy. Hey, loved a good time. And he'd give you the shirt off of his back, that type of guy, from all indications. But good stuff there, Alex. I'm going to definitely try and check that out for sure. That movie, the full thing, you know, and I'll let everyone know how it goes down. But I look forward to it because, hey, there's some good older movies out there that may have slipped by. We mentioned Harry Greaves, Tiger Flower, Ace Hutkins. There is a little bit of footage out there on Mickey Walker against Ace Hutkins. There is some of that out there. I saw something. I'm pretty sure. I'm not thinking of Ace Hutkins and someone else, but I think it's a short clip. I don't know if there's a ton of footage from their fight, but there is something out there. Tommy Loughran, the Philly Phantom, the Phantom of Philly, Tommy Loughran. Now, there is footage of the fight between Tommy Loughran and Mickey Walker, and it's amazing footage. That's another one I went back and rewatched. I had seen these, but I wanted to get a fresh look at them again. And man, such a marvelous boxer is one Tommy Loughran, man. He's so underrated, and it's crazy. You sometimes hear these greatest light heavyweight lists and things of that nature. His name doesn't pop up, and I'm like, holy crap! But I mean, you're gonna forget about one of the greatest fighters in history, coming out of Philadelphia, arguably the greatest fighting town in history, with one of the greatest resumes in the sports history. You can't have that list without Tommy Loughran on there, no doubt about it. And Loughran, man, you just get to see the beautiful stylistic approach he took to things. Now, there was some tying up in this fight with Mickey Walker. It's an interesting style clash, but man, you could just tell that Tommy Loughran, man, light on his feet. He kept his hands a bit lower, but he'd have that left kind of arched out there, ready to bring that jab up. And that was, I think, an advantage for him against Mickey Walker, because with Mickey Walker being 5'7" and Lochran being closer to 6 feet tall. I forget what his height is, but somewhere closer to that. You could just see that played into his advantage, and he would bring that jab. So if Walker wanted to dip any lower, he's right there level with the jab. And Tommy didn't have to bring it up too far, even with Mickey Walker in his regular stance or whatnot. So you get to see him really putting in the work there, and excellent boxer there, Tommy Lochran. Excellent resume, as mentioned. He's another guy who went up to fight at heavyweight. As a matter of fact, he lost to Primo Carnera at heavyweight. I do remember that. I've seen that or seen something about it. I'm pretty sure I've seen it because I think there's some footage out there of it. That being said, Tommy Lochran, man, one of the best in general, and someone, if you think about great light heavyweight, even heavyweight, what he was able to do, a name should be there. He beat Jimmy Braddock, and Jimmy Braddock went on to, of course, we know, become a heavyweight champion. So Tommy Lochran, underrated. Alex says, take a look at the Walker Milligan fight. You see Walker was a truly great fighter. Yeah, and I did see a highlight of that one. Yeah, he handled him. He gave him that work, as I always say. I believe that's the one we stopped, dude, really laying into him. I had to double back on that one for sure there, Alex. But, man, hey, I'm with you there. Yeah, Mickey Walker, man, amazing fighter. And as mentioned, it's just crazy to see because you hear it talked about in terms of, like guys back in the day, they would fight anyone. And in this case, you can actually see it. You can actually see that Mickey Walker would fight anyone. He would go up in weight and do his thing. So it's pretty crazy to see, just thinking about it. And that's one of the things that kind of sticks with me when I think about Mickey Walker. I always just think about primarily just him being in the ring there with Max Schmeling and Jack Sharkey, knowing where he started. It's an amazing thing. Dan says, Walker used to be talked about a lot when I was young. Seems to have been a bit forgotten recently. Most certainly. Yeah, I think with a lot of these guys, hey, hopefully that's what we can do is shed and bring more light to them. At least I want to be a part of that as well. But, yeah, he should be. And he's a popular fighter as well. I mean, you don't get that name Toy Bulldog without being a popular fighter. And some of that shine is kind of worn thin a bit. But, hey, we're here to keep it alive. We're here to keep hope, keep the life and legacy of these great fighters alive here through discussing and talking about what they were able to accomplish in their career as boxers. 2-division world champion there. I mean, you name it. Amazing resume. I mentioned Tommy Lochran. Leo Lomsky. I believe Leo Lomsky was a middleweight champion. Correct me if I'm wrong, and for those that do know, but Leo Lomsky, another damn good fighter. I got his picture right there in mind. But just think about that. And this isn't all the names on the resume. I mentioned Jack Sharkey, Max Schmeling, Maxie Rosenblum. A lot of these we don't have film of, but that being said, these are fights that, man, they took place. We have the accounts, and we know what he was able to accomplish. Alexander Campbell mentions if Tommy had a big punch, hey, indeed, he would be a beast right there, even more of a beast for sure, because he had pretty much everything else there to get the job done. Just thinking about it, if he had that big punch there, Max, as you know, or Alex, that is, as you know, then that would be something crazy. He was pretty light on his feet, moved fairly well, patient, gracious boxer. I mean, as I said, stylistically, he'd be trouble for anyone. But, yeah, if he could get you out of there, if he had that eraser, I mean, that's a fighter no one would want to run up against in any scenario right there. But heck of a fighter regardless of such. So nods to these guys, what they were able to accomplish even in situations where the advantage wasn't on their side. You know, Tommy, solid guy, not the most huge guy, but hey, he went on to fight at heavyweight. Same with Mickey Walker. Just think about that, a welterweight going up to fight at heavyweight. I mean, he used what best suited him, is that aggression, that tenacity, getting in there and exchanging, mixing it up with a fighter and with a fighter and truly pushing them, and you could push them back. And in the case of while Walker lost to Tommy Loughran, they were tied up at different times, and you can see that Walker, he was able to move Tommy a little bit. Tommy was a strong fighter as well, but you could just see how strong Mickey Walker was in that fight, I think, as well, though he did lose the contest. Dan mentions true all-time great Loughran. No doubt about it there. Dan the man. So all-time great for sure. Once again, show you some of those notable fights. We just kind of talked through some aspects of it. Some others that were Lou Bogash is a name that is not showing there, who he was in with. I mentioned Johnny Risco. There are some others. As a matter of fact, let me look at his just real quick. I want to go through some of these names on his resume. Of course, I mentioned Johnny Griffiths. Who are some others? Oh, yeah, Jock Malone, solid fighter there, who is on the resume of Mickey Walker. I didn't put him in here. That being said, he solid. Joe Dundee. I feel like we were talking about Joe Dundee on a different stream, and it was in relation to maybe Johnny Dundee as well, and whether they were connected. I believe they're not, before I recall. Of course, we talked about Tiger Flowers. Who else? Paul Berlenbach. Remember that name? I don't know a ton about him, but some of you probably remember that name. Paul Berlenbach, solid fighter there for sure. Ace Hudkins. I did mention him, but for the middleweight title right there, thinking about Ace getting a shot at the world middleweight title. Let's see who else is on here. These are just some of the other names. I'm looking at his resume right now. I mentioned Johnny Risco. It's crazy. He was in there with Johnny Risco. I like Johnny Risco. Solid all-around fighter. Oh, yeah, Paulino Uskandun, the basswood chopper. So Mickey Walker was in there with Paulino Uskandun. That's pretty crazy when you think about that, right? Paulino, Spaniard. He's another one of those tough and rugged fighters. Never won a world title, but he could get it done. And Bear was able, not Bear, but Walker was able to get a win over him. It's crazy thinking about it. Bearcat Wright, not a huge name, but a hell of a fighter from that period. And tough guy right there, Bearcat. So he's got him on the resume. Kingfish Levinsky. He's got a win over him. Just think about that. Kingfish Levinsky. Of course, we mentioned Max. Let's see. Did I mention Lou Brouillard? Lou Brouillard, that he was in the ring with Lou Brouillard and lost the decision to him. But just think about that. Brouillard was a great fighter. Oh, yeah, Young Corbett III, the middleweight, former world middleweight champion, I'm pretty sure as well. Young Corbett III. So Mickey Walker was in there with him. He lost, but that being said, he's in there with a hell of a fighter right there. But, just think about that. Some of those names are insane just to think about his overall career. So truly one of the best resumes in the sport of boxing, for sure. And that's on top of those that we already mentioned there, the Grebs, the Loughrans, etc. Truly remarkable thinking about it. Let me see, Dan, true all-time great Loughren, yes, indeed. Taught Max Baer how to fight. Oh, yeah, Max Baer, ran into Loughren there early on. Big punching Max Baer, but I think that kind of helped build him up, facing some of these guys right there. And you could tell that, you had to go work on some things, because a guy like Loughren, he could outbox you for sure. Alex Campbell mentions Paul Berlenbach, the great light heavy, is rarely talked about. He had a heavy hand. No doubt about that. Berlenbach, so he's on the resume as well. And, I want to dive more into Berlenbach myself there, Alex, but you're right. Rarely talked about. Another one who's not on this, but I'm going to do something on is is John Henry Lewis, another light heavyweight who isn't really talked about these days. And that being said, he is one of the greats for sure. He is one of the greats, John Henry Lewis. When you think about him, Berlenbach, as you mentioned, just a number of guys out there, kind of like we were discussing with some others, they're kind of they've fallen off the radar somewhat. But that being said, I think they'll eventually start to get their just due as we continue to talk about them. And at the very least, if others don't join in the mix, hey, we'll continue to be the voice, the beacon for these great historic champions, rivals, contenders, etc. in the sport. But no doubt about it, one of those, of course, is the toy Bulldog Mickey Walker, former world welterweight and world middleweight champion. So we're just going to have a slight discussion on him, which is what we did. It's not the end of the road, so we'll come back with more and discuss some of these other great fighters. I'll set up something and shout out to Simply That Guy. He had recommended that. And another one he recommended, Sam McVeigh. So I'll look to set that one up. Maybe we can chat about the great Sam McVeigh here in the coming week. So I look forward to catching up with everyone once again as we dive into this great sports history. And as mentioned, more videos are coming. So stay tuned. Going to try to keep it fresh and spunky. Be sure to like, subscribe, feel free to comment, share, whatever it may be, as we continue to push these great stories of these great historic fighters. So thank you all for being here and in attendance as we just did a quick little discussion on the great Mickey Walker. Seems like we're about to get a storm here where I'm at, but holding it down from DC. Have a good night, everyone.